What if the truth about the fallen angels wasn't just buried in time, but hidden on purpose? Most people know the Bible says Michael locked them away. But ancient scrolls dating back 3,000 years tell a much darker story, one where Michael didn't just imprison these beings, he turned their own evil against them. Imagine a prison where time stands still, where your worst sins chase you forever. That's what Michael created, and God allowed it. But why? Why would the most powerful archangel craft such a place? And what if those angels found a way to escape? You see, this story isn't just about punishment. It's about betrayal, forbidden desire, and a divine strategy to stop evil at its root. Long before the flood angels walked among us, not just any angels watchers sent to guide humanity, but they didn't just watch, they fell, and what they unleashed nearly destroyed the world. Comment 777 if you're ready to discover the hidden truth buried beneath centuries of silence, because what you're about to learn goes beyond giants, beyond the flood. This is about Michael's secret mission, and the moment heaven itself had to intervene. Now let's go back to the beginning, to the day angels fell, and Michael stood ready. Hidden 3,000-year-old Bible exposes what Michael did to the fallen angels. The Bible says Michael locked up fallen angels, but what if I told you? Ancient Aramaic scrolls hidden away for nearly 3,000 years expose a truth far darker than you could have ever imagined. These ancient texts, concealed deep within caves and forgotten by history, tell a story that might forever change the way we see angels, punishment, and God's ultimate plan. Imagine for a moment an eternal place beyond the edges of time itself, a place Michael didn't just guard, but personally crafted. But what exactly did Michael create? According to these ancient scrolls, Michael took the fallen angels' very own sins, the evil deeds they committed, and forged them into a prison designed uniquely for each angel. This wasn't a simple jail with chains or bars. This was torment personalized by the angel's own wrongdoing. Can you imagine that, experiencing the endless repetition of your own darkest acts, chasing you relentlessly without escape, mercy, or reprieve? How would you bear it? Could anyone survive the endless echo of their own evil? But wait, why would God permit Michael to unleash such relentless torment? Was it truly divine justice, or was there something deeper hidden beneath this severe punishment? Let's step back into a time when angels openly walked the earth. Powerful, majestic beings known as the Watchers had a sacred role given directly by God. Observe humanity, guide their path silently, but never interfere. These angelic guardians, however, became distracted by something unexpected: the breathtaking beauty of human women. Picture yourself there as one of these divine beings. Would you have been able to resist temptation? Could you have turned away, maintaining your sacred duty? Or would the allure of human love have proved irresistible? Genesis 6 clearly describes this forbidden attraction. The sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Imagine the gravity of this decision: mighty immortal angels knowingly defying God, choosing to follow their hearts into forbidden territory. Did they even realize the magnitude of what they had unleashed? These forbidden relationships soon gave birth to monstrous offspring, the Nephilim, towering giants whose mere existence caused chaos and destruction, plunging the world into unspeakable violence and suffering. Scripture itself speaks of this tragic consequence. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days. They were the heroes of old men of renown. Genesis 6:4. Yet what kind of heroes could unleash so much devastation? Imagine the sorrow God must have felt as his creation descended into darkness because of angels, who knew better but chose desire over obedience. It was at this crucial moment that God summoned Michael, heaven's greatest warrior, trusted beyond all others. Michael's divine mission confront these fallen watchers and put an end to the chaos their rebellion had unleashed. Imagine being Michael, tasked with punishing those who once stood beside you in heaven, friends who had betrayed everything sacred. Would your heart hold sorrow, anger, or both? But Michael's punishment was far worse than mere imprisonment. According to these hidden Aramaic scrolls, he chose to use the angels' own sins against them. Each fallen angel's punishment became a living nightmare woven from the specific evil they introduced into the world. For the angel who revealed deadly weapons and warfare, Michael forged a torment in which endless wars raged with the angel, forced to helplessly witness humanity destroying itself with the very knowledge he once gave them. For those who taught vanity and seduction, an eternity was crafted in which they were trapped by endless despair, forever chased by unattainable desire. Can you even fathom such poetic and cruel justice, endlessly trapped by your own darkest creations? Yet as powerful and precise as Michael's judgment was, these scrolls suggest a chilling possibility. What if this eternal punishment wasn't as secure as Michael believed? Could these fallen angels trapped in endless cycles of torment somehow find a way to break free? Imagine the unbridled rage and thirst for vengeance these beings would carry after thousands of years of personalized torture. If they escaped, what would happen to humanity? Could we possibly withstand the wrath of beings who have suffered such prolonged torment? Could you face the horror of an unleashed army of fallen angels, each driven mad by their punishment? These hidden scrolls raise urgent questions that might reshape our entire understanding of the angelic realm. Why did God permit such a uniquely horrifying punishment? Was it simply divine justice, or perhaps a grim warning echoing through eternity? A lesson for all beings, angel and human alike, to remember the terrifying consequences of rebellion? Enter the Nephilim offspring, born from the forbidden union between angels and humans. But these weren't ordinary children, not by any means. These beings grew at an astonishing rate, quickly towering above all humanity. Imagine standing face to face with giants whose height stretched toward the heavens themselves. Could you withstand the sheer terror of looking into the eyes of such monstrous beings, creatures whose very existence defied God's natural order? Yet their immense size was merely the beginning. What truly made the Nephilim terrifying was their insatiable hunger, a hunger that knew no bounds. Initially, ordinary food satisfied them, but their relentless appetites quickly spiraled out of control. Picture this scene: clearly fields once lush with crops now left barren and devastated. Livestock mysteriously vanishing overnight, leaving farmers bewildered and terrified. Soon enough, even animals couldn't satisfy their voracious appetites, and humanity itself became their next target. Could you imagine waking every day knowing your family might become prey for these monstrous beings, forever driven by endless cravings? Would you dare step outside knowing giants roamed the earth, constantly hunting life? On earth rapidly descended into chaos. The Nephilim's destructive hunger began spreading fear, desperation, and panic among mankind. Families locked their doors, praying in whispered desperation that the giants might pass them by. Entire villages disappeared overnight. How long could humanity endure in a world where survival seemed impossible and every new dawn brought fresh horror? Could anyone stop these massive beings born from forbidden love, yet turned into instruments of unimaginable terror? This was no longer just a small problem. It was a catastrophic nightmare that threatened the very survival of creation itself. The delicate balance of the world God had lovingly crafted began unraveling. His beautiful creation, meant to flourish under the watchful care of his angels, was now being devoured by beings who should never have existed. Genesis 6:5 describes the gravity of this crisis clearly. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. Imagine the sorrow God must have felt witnessing such devastation unfolding upon his beloved creation, all sparked by a single choice made by angels who knew better, yet surrendered to their passions. But humanity had no idea this was only the beginning of their troubles. As the Nephilim's strength grew, their violence increased exponentially. Their monstrous appetites fueled not only hunger, but cruelty, driving them into terrifying acts of destruction. Can you picture cities crumbling beneath their feet? Entire civilizations collapsing under their weight, and humans living in constant dread of becoming the next victim? How could humanity survive such relentless, unstoppable destruction? The situation became so dire, so beyond redemption, that God himself was forced to consider drastic measures. Could the world continue this way? Or would the Almighty have no choice but to take an action so severe, so earth-shattering, that history itself would forever be changed? This wasn't simply punishment. This was about saving humanity from total annihilation. If you stood in God's place, how far would you go to stop the unimaginable terror of the Nephilim from destroying all life? Night after night, the earth trembled under the Nephilim's unquenchable hunger. These towering offspring of angels and humans weren't merely scavengers fighting for survival. No, they demanded absolute dominion. Entire villages that once rang with laughter and music fell silent in a single sunrise. One day, you walked through bustling marketplaces. The next, you slipped between shuttered doorways and caved-in roofs where families had vanished without a trace. Their appetites weren't sated by grain or livestock. They tore down barns, trampled fields underfoot, and then turned their ravenous gaze upon people themselves. Can you imagine hiding in the shadows, heart pounding as foot-long footprints thundered past your hiding spot? Could you bear the knowledge that at any moment those enormous silhouettes might discover you and your loved ones? And yet the giants craved more than sustenance. They craved worship. Bow before us, they thundered voices like avalanches, and we will spare your homes. Refuse, and we will crush all you hold dear. For every man or woman brave enough to stand firm, there were countless others forced to their knees in terror. In the midnight hush, desperate souls would lift tear-blurred faces toward the stars, whispering pleas that echo the psalmist's lament. Hear, O Lord, and have mercy on me. Lord, be my help. Psalm 30:10. But each plea seemed swallowed by the vast dark sky until hope grew as brittle as a dry reed. How long could they cry out before the heavens stayed forever silent? Had God abandoned his own creation just when despair threatened to snuff out every ember of resistance? The wind itself seemed to carry a new promise. Those prayers offered in the depths of fear were not lost. From the marble-bright halls of heaven, a plan began to take shape, a decree forged in divine wisdom. Gusts of glory swept across the firmament as angelic voices harmonized in a chorus of redemption. The Nephilim, swollen with false confidence, roared defiantly against a power they could not yet see. Yet on that turning point, the entire world held its breath. What would unfold when heaven's intervention broke through the choking grip of terror? Soon every creature under sky and earth would learn what true authority looks like. Imagine standing on the marble terraces of heaven itself, where time pauses and eternity listens. God has summoned his 4 greatest archangels: Michael the mighty general, Gabriel, the trusted messenger, Uriel, the searching light, and Raphael the healer, for a crisis meeting that will decide the fate of the world below. The throne room echoes with anticipation as each angel waits for their Father's command. Can you feel the tension crackling like lightning in that sacred air? Michael the warrior cannot contain his urgency. He strides forward, his armor gleaming with celestial fire, and declares with a voice that rumbles like thunder, "Send me down at once with heaven's legions. We shall crush every one of these Nephilim giants in a single dawn before they crush another innocent soul." His words ring out, and you can almost hear Earth's inhabitants gasp in hope and fear at the promise of swift deliverance. Then Gabriel raises his hand with calm authority, his wings folding into a posture of careful thought. "Hold fast, Michael," he urges softly. "These Nephilim are born of both angel and human blood. Even in their corruption, they bear a spark of our Father's image. Might there still be goodness among them worthy of mercy? Let us first offer warning and hope to any who would turn from violence." His proposal hangs in the air, stirring doubts and opening hearts to compassion. Next, Uriel steps forward, his eyes glowing like coals of judgment. "Perhaps we should test mankind itself," he suggests. "Reveal their hearts as silver is refined by fire. We could sift the faithful who cling to righteousness from those who revel in crime. In this way, we honor free will and preserve the innocent." You wonder, what would you choose if you stood before such a test? Raphael shakes his head and places a gentle hand on Earth's invisible wounds. "My brothers, the land itself is broken." He reminds them, his tone full of compassion. "The soil is poisoned. The rivers run red with blood. The very air reeks of fear. Before any battle or trial, we must heal our Father's creation. Only then can justice be served without leaving ruin in its wake." His words carry the weight of every orphaned child and hungry farmer. God's eyes shine with infinite wisdom as he hears each argument, seeing truth in all their voices like threads of gold. Then, in a manner that surprises even the archangels, he speaks. "Each of you will fulfill a part of this plan. Michael, you will lead the charge against the giants themselves. Gabriel, you will bring messages of hope and warning to those who prove faithful. Uriel, you will discern and gather the hearts still pure among men. And Raphael, you will restore what has been laid waste." You can almost feel the tension in those heavenly halls, the air crackling with purpose as the archangels waited for God's next word. Their tasks were laid out. Michael would lead the charge against the ravenous Nephilim. Gabriel would carry messages of courage to the faithful. Uriel would sift through human hearts to find the righteous, and Raphael would mend the shattered earth. Yet even with heaven's might assembled, there remained one vital element, missing a champion on earth who could bridge the gap between the divine strategy and human reality. Who among mortals still clung to goodness when giants stalked the land? Which heart beat steadily under the weight of fear and temptation? God surveyed the chaos below villages, reduced to ash by hungry Colossi families, forced into servitude or slaughter. And he knew the answer before his angels even spoke. His gaze had been fixed on one man and his household, their quiet faith shining like a beacon amid the whirlwind of terror. Imagine living in that era, Nephilim patrolling every road demanding tribute, and worship crushing dissent without mercy. The strongest warriors hid in caves, the wise fled to mountaintops, yet one man remained steadfast. Day after day, Noah rose at dawn to pray, his voice echoing across empty fields as he poured out his heart to the Almighty. Each evening, by the flicker of a lone oil lamp, he gathered his wife and sons to remind them of God's commandments. Walk blamelessly, he would say, quoting Genesis 6:9, "For I have seen you upright in my sight." But Noah was no flawless hero carved from stone. He stumbled under doubt, wrestled with sorrow as unfamiliar faces appeared on his doorstep, and once in a moment of despair, he lashed out in frustration. Yet, in every misstep, he did not hide. He turned back to God, confessed his weakness, and pleaded for strength to carry on. It was this humility, this willingness to admit failure and press forward, that set him apart. Centuries ago, long before the rains began, God issued a command that must have sounded utterly impossible. Noah, construct an ark so vast it will shelter your family and representatives of every creature under heaven. Can you see him, hammer in hand, carving out this colossal vessel in the middle of dry land as curious neighbors whispered and laughed at his daring faith? And yet, with each mocking shout, Noah's resolve only deepened. Every plank he fitted, every nail he drove whispered back to heaven that he trusted God's promise more than human opinion. Behind the scenes, heaven's own task force was in motion. Michael the warrior archangel marched through forests and plains, gently herding pairs of lions, zebras, and elephants toward Noah's construction site. Gabriel flitted from town to town, planting seeds of panic in the hearts of those few willing to listen. The rains are coming. Repent now. Uriel hovered at the boundaries of the righteous remnant, his eyes scanning for any stragglers worthy of rescue. Meanwhile, Raphael busied himself gathering medicinal herbs and provisions, preparing to soothe every wounded paw and feverish brow once the voyage began. Seasons shifted as months folded into years. Noah's arms grew sinewy, his back curved beneath the weight of sawdust and sweat. Yet never did he pause. In doubt, the Nephilim, those towering giants birthed of angel and human, stomped past the worksite, belching laughter at the absurdity, until they too felt Michael's steady hand, guiding unruly elk and flighty deer into the ark's yawning hull. Even the giants' mockery faded when they realized the ark was no mere folly, but a fortress rising against a gathering storm. Then came the day when the skies darkened in earnest. Clouds swollen with intent blanketed the sun. At first, it was a gentle patter, raindrops like applause on the deck. But soon, the heavens unleashed torrents unseen in human memory sheets of water carving rivulets into the earth. From beneath the ground itself betrayed its secrets. Deep springs cracked open shooting geysers skyward to join the deluge. The world trembled as rivers surged beyond their banks, swallowing fields and forests in a single unstoppable wave. From the ark's portholes, Noah and his sons watched the Nephilim stand at shorelines that only hours before had felt solid underfoot. These giants, once confident in their invulnerability, found themselves wading in rising waters, their laughter replaced by roars of panic as each step threatened to sweep them away. The fury of God's judgment was no longer a distant rumor. It pressed upon the world like the weight of 1,000,000 storm clouds. Inside that wooden sanctuary, every heartbeat echoed the tension outside. Would the ark hold? Could Noah's faith and the precise handiwork of every plank and joint endure this apocalyptic flood? The answer lay just beyond the next crest of the waters, where the fate of mankind and of those hybrid colossi would soon be decided. And as the ark bobbed on the swelling seas, one question burned in every mind, both human and angelic alike. What comes after the storm? But just as heaven watched the deluge sweep away the Nephilim's terror, a new question arose among the archangels. What should become of the watchers themselves? Those very angels whose forbidden choices had unleashed this catastrophe. Michael's warrior voice broke the silence. They betrayed our trust, corrupted the human line, and birthed monsters that savage the innocent. Can mercy stand against such a debt of blood? Gabriel, ever the herald of hope, answered softly. Yet consider, 2 Peter 2:4. God did not spare the angels when they sinned, but cast them into chains of gloomy darkness until the judgment. Perhaps our task is to restrain rather than to erase. Uriel's fiery gaze pierced the council. Binding them is not enough. Let their own guilt become their torment, a conscience unshackled by mere darkness. Raphael, the compassionate healer, added, and if we unleash full wrath, who will learn mercy? Sometimes the greatest compassion is to imprison wrongdoing, not to obliterate it. Their debate rippled through heaven's vast halls, each archangel torn between justice's sword and mercy's balm. Finally, they reached a verdict that balanced both. The watchers would be bound in unbreakable chains and cast into a remorseless abyss, a punishment that preserved their awareness of guilt without granting them further power to harm. The rain didn't simply fall, it devoured. For 40 days and 40 nights, the heavens wept without pause, a divine torrent unleashed with such fury that even the towering Nephilim, those mighty giants born of forbidden unions, were powerless to escape. Imagine it. These beings who once walked the earth as untouchable forces, who had mocked both man and the Most High, now thrashing against rising waves, their deep voices drowned by the roar of the flood. One by one they vanished beneath the waters, their reign of terror swallowed by the judgment they had invited. Have you ever seen a tyrant fall? Now imagine watching them sink beneath the very justice they denied. And when the storm at last loosened its grip, the silence that followed was deafening. As the ark drifted through a world washed clean, the familiar landscape lay buried beneath an ocean of sorrow. It wasn't just the surface of the earth that had changed, it was its soul. When the waters began to pull back, revealing jagged new coasts and rivers cut by wrath, Noah and his family saw a planet reborn, but not without scars. Even the mountain on which the ark came to rest, Ararat, seemed solemn, as if mourning all that had been lost. Could you have stepped off that vessel, knowing you were the last link to a world now erased? Yes, the Nephilim were gone. The evil that had plagued mankind was no more. The corruption silenced, but at what cost? Thousands upon thousands of lives had been wiped away. Men, women, children, all swept into eternity. Cities erased, trees uprooted, history undone. And yet, in the midst of such devastation, a single truth gleamed like a beacon through the darkness. God had not given up on humanity. He had wiped the slate clean, but left the chalk in their hands. What would they write this time? Could you trust yourself not to repeat the same mistakes if the whole world rested on your shoulders? As Noah's foot touched dry ground, he wasn't just stepping onto soil, he was stepping into a covenant, a chance to rebuild, to live differently, to remember. Never again, God would later promise, shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. Genesis 9:11. But would humanity keep their side of the promise? Or would the seeds of rebellion take root again, even in this fresh soil? Could you, had you been there, resist the old ways, whispering through the wind? When the rain clouds finally withdrew, revealing a sky so blue it almost hurt to look at it, it must have felt like a world without echoes. The laughter, the music, the cries, they were gone. All that remained was the wind and the beating of hearts stunned into silence. The animals wandered out, 2 by 2, sniffing unfamiliar air. Noah and his family stood still, gazing over a world that looked nothing like the one they'd left behind. The silence wasn't peace, it was emptiness. Noah turned his eyes from the barren horizon to the faces of those he loved most. His wife, his sons, their wives. They were alive, yes. But what now? The flood had spared their bodies, but what of their hearts? What of their purpose? Around them, the world stretched in eerie silence. No rooftops, no smoke rising from chimneys, no signs of civilization, just mud and water-stained stone, the remnants of a world judged and washed away. The scent of wet earth still clung to the air, like a memory of sorrow. Could you have stood there, ankle-deep in silence, and not wondered, is survival enough? Then in that quiet moment, God spoke again. Not in thunder or fire, but with a voice that carried weight and wonder, a promise that would change everything. I am making a covenant. He said, not just with you, Noah, but with every living creature that walks the earth, flies in the sky, or crawls on the ground. And as the divine voice echoed across the emptiness, a shimmer began to stretch across the sky. There, hanging between heaven and earth, was something no human had ever seen. A rainbow, majestic and unreal, arced across the heavens like a divine signature painted with fire and light. Each color pulsed with meaning, as if creation itself remembered what had just passed. This said, God will be the sign of my covenant. Whenever the clouds gather and rain threatens the earth, this rainbow will appear. And when you see it, you'll know I will never again destroy all life with a flood. Can you imagine witnessing that? For the first time, a color-soaked bridge carved into the sky by the hand of God Himself. A symbol not just of beauty, but of mercy. A vow from the Creator to every living soul, including you. What would that moment have meant to you, standing in a world washed clean, hearing God say never again? But the covenant was not merely a promise of restraint. It came with purpose. God was offering humanity more than survival. He was offering mission. Be fruitful, He said, and multiply. Fill the earth again. Rule over the creatures, but do it with care. Guard the land, steward the skies, protect the waters, make the world better than it was before. It wasn't just a second chance, it was a divine commissioning. Humanity would no longer walk in the shadow of giants or live under the chaos of corrupted angels. This was a fresh beginning, a world untainted, handed back to mankind with clear instructions. But it wasn't just Noah and his family who were given new roles in this reborn world. The heavens stirred too. The great archangels, those who had stood watch during the darkest days of the flood, were entrusted with sacred assignments, each one chosen for a divine purpose that would ripple through generations. Michael, the warrior of light, was now more than just heaven's sword. He became the defender of mankind itself, a heavenly shield standing between humanity and the forces of darkness. Every time evil threatened to rise again, it would be Michael's blade that stood in its path. Have you ever wondered how many unseen battles have been fought for your soul? Gabriel, the messenger of divine mysteries, continued to deliver God's words to chosen individuals. His voice would later thunder in dreams and visions, announcing births, destinies, and revelations that would shape the course of history. "I am Gabriel," he would say. Centuries later, "I stand in the presence of God." Luke 1:19. Can you imagine hearing that voice in the silence of night? Uriel, the angel of wisdom and fire, was sent to guide human hearts toward understanding. In ancient writings, he is the one who illuminated the mysteries of the cosmos and warned of coming judgments. His role now, to help humanity avoid the mistakes of the past, to walk in truth, not blindness. Have you ever felt a quiet tug toward wisdom in a moment of confusion? Could it have been Uriel and Raphael, the gentle healer moved through creation, mending what had been broken? From wounded beasts to withered fields, his touch restored what the flood had crushed. In the book of Tobit, he would later say, "I am Raphael, one of the 7 who stand before the Lord." Tobit 12:15. But even now, after the flood, he was already tending to the scars left behind. This wasn't just about a reset, it was a transformation, a second chance not only to live, but to live rightly. God wasn't simply undoing the past, he was authoring a better future. The terror that the Nephilim had spread those giants of corruption and chaos would no longer define the earth. Instead, mankind would now be entrusted with building something sacred, something rooted in righteousness. So Noah's family got to work. They planted seeds not just in the ground, but in hope. Fields that had once drowned in silence were now tilled by human hands. Homes rose from the earth, not grand or perfect, but real. Every hammer swing was an act of faith. Every planted seed a whisper of trust. Can you see it? The slow, quiet rebuilding of a world that had once drowned under the weight of its own sin. And above it all, the rainbow still lingered, not just in the sky, but in their hearts. A covenant hung above them, like a divine banner, reminding them you were spared for a reason. That colored ark wasn't just God's promise, not to destroy again. It was his invitation to co-create. But as the hammering of wood echoed across the hills and crops began to sprout from the soil, one lingering question remained, one that no one dared speak aloud. Yet it sat heavy in the silence between them. Would humanity remember? Would they cling to the covenant marked in the sky? Or would they drift back into the very darkness that had drowned the old world? The years rolled on like a river, slow and steady. Grass covered the scorched earth. Trees rose where the flood had once swallowed valleys. Children laughed again, and life resumed its rhythm. Towns blossomed into cities, families expanded, and the sons of Noah spread across the continents, just as God had commanded. On the surface, it looked like a fresh beginning. But deep beneath the calm, something stirred. The Nephilim were gone. Yes, buried beneath the weight of divine wrath and floodwaters, but their memory refused to die. Around flickering campfires, parents would whisper tales to their children. Tales of monstrous beings with eyes like burning stars and voices that could split stone. Giants who were born not of man, but of a forbidden union. Creatures who devoured villages, who made war with heaven's order. Was it only a warning to frighten young ones into obedience? Or a fading echo of a horror once real? As generations passed, belief turned into legend into myth. And yet something strange began to happen. Farmers plowing untouched soil struck bones the size of tree trunks. Some said they belonged to ancient beasts, but others weren't so sure. Who had shoulders that wide, skulls that tall? Could it be that the giants didn't only live in storybooks? In the desolate canyons, explorers found drawings carved into stone, primitive yet clear. They showed towering figures walking among men, their arms like spears, their eyes marked with symbols no one could translate. Why would a people, thousands of years ago, record such images if they had never seen such things? And then came the weapons. Great slabs of rusted iron buried in the earth shaped like blades, but too massive for human hands. Who had wielded these? Who had crafted them? Some dismissed it all as fantasy, but others, those who listened a little closer, who looked a little deeper, they felt something wasn't right. They began to ask questions. What if the flood hadn't erased everything? What if remnants of the old world still lay beneath our feet, waiting to be uncovered? Because even though the fallen angels, the watchers, had been sealed in chains, locked away in the abyss, Jude 1:6, their influence still clung to the edges of the world, like a shadow just out of reach. And sometimes, late at night, that shadow seemed to whisper. There were reports. Quiet, unsettling rumors passed from village to village. Travelers said they'd heard strange voices in the wind while crossing the mountains. Not cries, not chants. Whispers. Soft, ancient syllables in no tongue spoken by men. Languages forgotten since the days when angels walked among us and giants ruled the earth. They came with notebooks and cameras, with shovels and scanners, scholars, archaeologists, thrill seekers, all of them chasing the same elusive shadow, the remnants of a world that once drowned under God's judgment. Ancient bones, massive tools, symbols etched into stone that no one could translate. Some called it science, others called it obsession. But the truth, it was something far more dangerous. As the dirt gave way to secrets buried since the days of Noah, strange artifacts began surfacing, things that didn't belong to any known civilization. Amulets that pulsed with strange energy, scrolls that crumbled in the hand, yet left behind words burned into the mind. Patterns repeated across continents, despite never having shared language or trade. What connected them all? The giants, the Nephilim. Some scholars believed these were echoes of a forgotten past. Others warned they were blueprints, instructions left behind for something or someone. And in the shadows, watching closely, were the archangels: Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel. They hadn't forgotten what came before. They knew the cost of curiosity, how easily knowledge could become a curse. Every time a human hand reached too far, uncovered something too dangerous, the archangels intervened. Quietly, swiftly. Evidence vanished. Research mysteriously lost. Witnesses suddenly changed their stories because they remembered. They remembered what it was like when the Watchers fell, when the sons of God crossed a forbidden line, when giants turned Earth into a battleground. But even their vigilance couldn't stop what was coming, because the danger wasn't where they were looking. While the world obsessed over bones and legends of titanic monsters, something else had begun to stir, something far subtler, deeper, not made of muscle and bone like the Nephilim, but of influence memory code, a virus of the soul. The knowledge the giants carried, dark, advanced, forbidden, had left fingerprints in the world, fingerprints that never faded. And now they were resurfacing, not in caves, not in ruins, but in ideas, in dreams, in whispers. The giants were gone, but their legacy was not. And those who sought power began following trails that led to doors better left closed, doors that even heaven hadn't fully sealed. You see, knowledge can be more dangerous than any sword, especially the kind passed down from beings who once defied the will of God. And so, unknowingly, mankind stood at the edge of another great fall. A new battle between good and evil was already taking shape. But this war wouldn't be fought with flood or fire. It would be fought in hidden places in hearts, in minds, in the very fabric of reality itself. The question is, would we see it coming before it was too late? Let me ask you something. If you found one of these ancient relics, something tied to the Nephilim humming with energy, would you destroy it or try to use it? And more importantly, do you think the archangels are still watching us now? Because one of them, Michael, has never stopped fighting. The mighty warrior who once stood between humanity and the wrath of fallen angels. That was only the beginning of his story. Did you know he's mentioned again and again, not just in the Bible, but in ancient Hebrew texts, the book of Daniel, the Revelation to John, even in the war, scrolls of the Dead Sea. His battles span millennia. He wrestled with Lucifer. He cast down principalities. He led the armies of heaven against beasts too terrifying to name. And there's one story, the most epic of all, that changed everything, a celestial war so fierce it shook the heavens and echoed on earth. Most people have never heard it, but we've uncovered it. So if you're ready to learn why Michael is called the Prince of the Heavenly Host, if you want to see what happened when he faced Satan himself in a battle that altered destiny, click the next video now. This isn't your Sunday school story. This is the true war of angels, one that still rages right above your head. But before you go, tell me in the comments, do you believe the Nephilim were real? And if so, where do you think their legacy is hiding today? Type 777 if you're ready to learn what heaven doesn't want us to forget. And if you want more ancient mysteries and hidden truths the world has tried to bury, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories that shake the soul. Because the battle isn't over, and trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next.